The monitor beeped steadily as Dr. Patel studied my latest glucose readings with a furrowed brow. My stomach knotted, not from morning sickness this time, but from dread. 3 weeks of inexplicably high readings despite following my meal plan. To the letter. Something wasn't adding up. "Olivia, I'm concerned," Dr. Patel said, removing her glasses. "Your numbers aren't matching your food diary. If this continues, we might need to consider insulin therapy or even early delivery." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I clutched my pregnancy journal tighter. "But I'm doing everything, right?" I whispered, tears threatening. "I measure every portion, I walk after meals." The doctor tilted her head. "Is there anything different at home? Any new stressors?" An image of Deborah, my mother-in-law, measuring sugar into my morning tea flashed through my mind. The same Deborah who had been helping prepare my meals since moving in 6 weeks ago. The same Deborah who kept insisting that a little sugar never hurt anyone. I felt sick as pieces clicked into place. Surely she wouldn't. Would she? I never planned on living with my mother-in-law. Nobody does, really. But when Deborah's condo developed black mold during Portland's wettest spring on record, Nathan and I did what any decent family would do. We offered her our guest room, just until the remediation is complete. 6 weeks later, I was beginning to regret our generosity. "Olivia, darling." Deborah's voice rang through our Craftsman home as I stepped through the front door, my marketing presentation materials still tucked under my arm. "I was starting to think you'd worked straight through dinner again." I forced a smile, hanging my rain jacket on the hook beside the door. The house smelled amazing, ginger and garlic and something caramelizing. But my glucose monitor beeped a reminder that I needed to be careful. "Just finishing up the quarterly pitch," I explained, slipping off my shoes. "Big client." Deborah emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on one of the new floral dish towels she'd bought to replace my modern gray ones. Her silver-streaked black hair was perfectly styled despite the steam from cooking, and her critical gaze swept over my swollen belly and rain-frizzed hair. "Nathan called. He'll be home late. Some emergency with the servers." She clicked her tongue disapprovingly. "You both work too hard. It's not good for the baby." I bit back a retort. This was the 3rd time this week Nathan had been late, leaving me alone with his mother. I couldn't help wondering if these emergencies were becoming more frequent to avoid the tension at home. "I need to check my blood sugar," I said, moving toward the kitchen. Deborah followed, hovering as I prepared my glucose meter. "All these numbers and tests," she sighed. "When I was pregnant with Nathan, we didn't fuss so much. A woman knew how to carry a child without turning it into a science experiment." I pricked my finger, watching the blood bead up. "Gestational diabetes isn't something I can control by willing it away, Deb." The meter beeped. 146. Too high for this time of day, especially since I'd had a salad for lunch. "That can't be right," I muttered, reaching for an alcohol swab to try again. "See? Those machines are always giving you anxiety," Deborah said, stirring something on the stove. "Come eat before it gets cold." I made Nathan's favorite, honey, ginger chicken. I froze. "Honey? Deb, I can't have that much sugar." She waved dismissively. "A little natural sweetness won't hurt. Your doctor is being overly cautious. Women have been having babies for thousands of years without all these restrictions." This argument again. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that Deborah was from a different generation, that she meant well, that this was temporary. I appreciate the thought, but I need to stick to my meal plan. I opened the fridge, looking for the prepared meals I'd batch cooked on Sunday. The containers were gone. "Where are my meal prep containers?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Deborah sniffed. "I needed the space for proper groceries, so I consolidated some things. Besides, eating the same thing day after day can't be good for the baby's development. My carefully measured, carb-counted meals, gone. I closed the fridge, counted to 10. Deb, I need those specific meals to keep my blood sugar stable. Dr. Patel was very clear about this. Dr. Patel doesn't know everything, Deborah replied, setting a plate on the table. My friend Linda's daughter had a doctor just like yours. All rules and restrictions. She switched doctors and delivered a perfect 10-pound baby boy. Sometimes, these young doctors are too caught up in their textbooks. A 10-pound baby. My hand instinctively went to my belly. Large babies were a complication of gestational diabetes, one of many I was trying to avoid. I heard the front door open, and relief washed over me. Nathan was home. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his dark hair damp from the rain, looking exhausted but brightening when he saw us. "Something smells amazing," he said, kissing my cheek before giving his mother a hug. "Honey ginger chicken," Deborah announced proudly. "Your favorite." I caught Nathan's eye, willing him to remember our conversation about my dietary needs. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Mom, remember Olivia needs to be careful with sugar right now?" Deborah's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "It's barely a tablespoon in the whole dish, Nathan. Your wife and my grandchild need proper nutrition, not those sad little containers of rabbit food." Nathan looked between us, clearly torn. This was the problem. He could never quite bring himself to firmly contradict his mother. Not since his father died and she became fragile. "I'm sure a little won't hurt," he said finally, avoiding my gaze. "Just this once." Betrayal stung sharp and swift. I pushed back from the table. "I need some air." Outside on our small back porch, the persistent Portland drizzle matched my mood. I pulled my cardigan tighter around my shoulders, watching. Drops collect on the Japanese maple we'd planted when we first moved in. My phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. "Survival check? Is Hurricane Deborah still a Category 5? I managed a small smile. Zoe had been my sanity line these past weeks, upgraded to a 6. She consolidated my meal prep and made honey chicken. Nathan took her side. Again. The response came quickly. "Bed's still made up in my spare room if you need an evacuation route." Tempting. So tempting. But I couldn't keep running to Zoe's downtown loft every time things got tense. This was my home, my pregnancy, my life. The door creaked open behind me, and Nathan stepped out, plate in hand. "I brought you some dinner," he said cautiously. "Just the chicken, no sauce." I didn't turn around. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't about one meal. This is about her constantly undermining me, and you letting her." He sighed, setting the plate on the small table between our porch chairs. "She's trying to help Liv, in her own way." "Help?" I finally faced him. How is ignoring my medical needs helping? How is throwing away my carefully prepared food helping? "She didn't throw it away, she just..." He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "Look, it's hard for her, okay? Dad always handled the practical stuff. She's never lived alone before. And now with the baby coming, she's excited to be involved." "Involved is not the same as taking over," I said, keeping my voice low despite wanting to shout. "Nathan, I'm scared. My numbers have been off for weeks now. If they don't stabilize, there could be serious complications." His expression softened and he reached for my hand. "I know. I'm sorry. I'll talk to her." "You've said that before. This time I mean it." He squeezed my fingers. "I'll make it clear she needs to respect your meal plan, doctor's orders." I wanted to believe him, but as we went back inside, I caught Deborah rearranging the nursery color swatches I'd carefully selected. The pastel greens and soft yellows I'd chosen had been pushed aside in favor of traditional pink and blue options. "I think we should wait until we know if it's a boy or girl," she was saying. Gender-neutral nurseries are so impersonal, don't you think? Nathan threw me an apologetic glance, and I knew his promised talk would be watered down to nothing. Again. That night, I lay awake listening to Nathan's steady breathing beside me. My mind raced with worries about my blood sugar, the baby, and how quickly Deborah had assumed control of our home. The spare room that was supposed to become our nursery was now filled with her things. Boxes she claimed couldn't stay in her condo during remediation. The kitchen was reorganized to her liking. Even my home office had been partially converted to storage for her seasonal decorations. Space invaders came in many forms, I was discovering. Some wore floral blouses and carried baby name books from the 1980s. Morning came too quickly. I woke to find Nathan already gone and a note on his pillow. Early meeting. Couldn't wake you. You looked so peaceful. Love you. Peaceful was the last thing I felt. Downstairs, Deborah was waiting with a cup of tea. Good morning, sleepyhead. I made your breakfast. Decaf tea with just a touch of honey. Natural sugar is better than those artificial sweeteners. I eyed the tea suspiciously but took it. One battle at a time. I needed to check my glucose, shower, and get to work. The Harriman pitch was today, and I'd been preparing for weeks. Thanks, but I'll just have my usual protein shake, I said, reaching for the blender. Deborah's smile faltered. I don't understand why you insist on those powdered concoctions when I'm here to cook proper food. Because my proper food needs to be precisely measured, Deb. I tried to keep irritation from my voice as I assembled my shake ingredients. She watched disapprovingly as I measured almond milk, protein powder, and a carefully weighed portion of berries. When are you planning to start your maternity leave? She asked suddenly. I looked up, surprised. Not until a month before my due date. Why? She stirred her own tea thoughtfully. Linda's daughter. You remember I mentioned her? She stopped working at 3 months, said it was the best decision she ever made. Gave her time to really prepare for motherhood. I'm not Linda's daughter, I said, perhaps more sharply than intended. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My career is important to me. Of course it is, dear, Deborah said with that particular tone that managed to be both condescending and pitying. But soon you'll have something far more important. Priorities change. I bit my tongue and checked my blood sugar. 152. Higher than it should be first thing in the morning. I frowned at the meter. Something wrong? Deborah asked. My fasting glucose is elevated again. I grabbed my journal, recording the number with growing concern. This was a pattern. My numbers were consistently high despite my careful adherence to my diet. Oh, those machines, Deborah waved dismissively. Half the time, they're probably wrong. But medical devices didn't hold grudges or have agendas. They just reported data. Data that was increasingly worrisome. I hurried through my morning routine, vaguely aware of Deborah rearranging something in the living room. When I came downstairs with my presentation materials, I nearly tripped over a box in the hallway. Sorry about the clutter, Deborah called, from the living room. Linda dropped off some baby things. Her grandbabies have outgrown them. I carefully stepped around the box. That's thoughtful, but we've already ordered most of what we need. Deborah appeared in the doorway, holding a yellowed baby blanket. Nonsense. New parents always think they know what they need until the baby comes. Trust me, you'll be grateful for these things. I checked my watch. No time to argue. We can sort through it this weekend. I have to run. Big presentation today. Her expression clouded. In your condition, you should really consider cutting back. Stress affects the baby, you know. I'm pregnant, not incapacitated, I said, grabbing my keys. I've got to go. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw her watching from the window, phone in hand, probably calling Nathan, again. The Harriman pitch went well, despite my distraction. My team picked up on my energy and delivered their portions flawlessly. Small victories. As we packed up our materials, my boss Kelly lingered behind. "Knockout presentation, Olivia," she said. "The expansion strategy you outlined is exactly what they needed to hear." I smiled, relief washing over me. "Thanks. I was worried I might have been too aggressive with the timeline." "Not at all. Ambition suits you." She paused. "How are you feeling? Everything on track with the baby?" I hesitated. Kelly had been supportive of my pregnancy from day one, assuring me my position was secure, and even discussing potential flexible arrangements after my return from leave. "The baby's good," I said, settling for partial truth. "Just some issues with my gestational diabetes management." She nodded sympathetically. "My sister had that with her second. Not fun. You're taking care of yourself, right? We need you healthy." "Trying to," I said. "It's just been complicated with my mother-in-law staying with us." Kelly raised an eyebrow. "Ah, say no more. My mother-in-law sent me a book called Professional Women Who Choose Family First when I was pregnant with Mia." I laughed despite myself. "Deborah keeps telling me about her friend's daughter who quit her job at 3 months pregnant and delivered a perfect 10-pound baby. Because what every woman wants is to push a bowling ball through her lady parts," Kelly deadpanned. She squeezed my shoulder. "Hang in there, and remember, you've got allies here." The validation carried me through the afternoon, but as I drove home, dread crept back in. What would Deborah have rearranged today? What critical comment about working mothers was waiting? I wasn't prepared for what I found. My home office, my carefully curated workspace with its ergonomic chair, vision board, and organized files, had been dismantled. The desk was pushed against the wall, my monitor and docking station disconnected. Boxes of baby clothes covered every surface, and in the center of the room stood a white wooden rocking chair I'd never seen before. "Do you like it?" Deborah appeared behind me, beaming. "It was on sale at that charming boutique on Hawthorne. Perfect for late-night feedings, don't you think?" I stared at her, speechless. This room, my space, had been violated. "You moved my office," I finally managed. "Well, you'll be home with the baby soon enough," she said as if it were obvious. "I thought we could get the nursery properly started. That little bedroom you were planning to use is much too small." "That little bedroom is the nursery," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "This is my office, where I work, where I'll continue to work after the baby comes." Deborah's smile faltered. "But surely you don't intend to keep working full-time once the baby arrives? Nathan said you might take an extended leave." "Nathan said what?" "I never discussed extended leave with Nathan," I said, feeling dizzy. "I'm taking 3 months, then returning to work. That's always been the plan." Deborah looked genuinely confused. "But who will care for the baby?" "We've already toured childcare centers," I said. "The one connected to Nathan's company has an infant room and priority placement for employees' children." She gasped as if I'd suggested leaving the baby with wolves. "Childcare? At 3 months? Oh, Olivia, babies that young need their mothers. Nathan can't possibly agree with this." "Nathan and I made this decision together," I said, though doubt crept in. Had he been telling his mother something different? The front door opened and relief washed over me. Nathan was home and I needed answers. He appeared in the doorway, taking in the transformed office and the obvious tension. "What's going on?" "Your mother converted my office into a nursery without asking," I said, not bothering to hide my anger. "And apparently you told her I was taking extended leave." Nathan's eyes widened. "I never—" He looked at his mother. "Mom, what is this?" Deborah's expression shifted to one of hurt innocence. "I was only trying to help, Nathan. Olivia works so hard, and with the baby coming, I thought she'd appreciate having one less thing to worry about. By removing my workspace? I asked incredulously. The nursery needed to be larger than that tiny box room, Deborah insisted. Any mother would prioritize the baby's needs over a home office. The implication hung in the air. Any good mother. Any real mother. I looked to Nathan, silently pleading for him to stand with me this time. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. "Mom, you should have asked before making changes to our home." A gentle rebuke, but a rebuke nonetheless. Small progress. "But the rocking chair was a surprise," she protested. "I wanted to do something special." "We appreciate the thought," Nathan said diplomatically. "But next time, please check with us first." Not the forceful defense I'd hoped for, but better than nothing. "I need to check my blood sugar," I muttered, pushing past them both. In the kitchen, I pricked my finger with shaking hands. The meter beeped. 165. Way too high for this time of day, especially since I'd eaten a carefully measured late lunch. Nathan came in, concern etched on his face. "Liv, I'm sorry about the office. I had no idea she was planning that." "Did you tell her I was taking extended leave?" I asked, recording the glucose reading in my journal. "No. I mean, she kept asking about our childcare plans, and I said we hadn't finalized everything yet. I was trying to avoid another lecture." "Well, she took that as permission to redecorate," I said bitterly. "And my numbers are still spiking for no apparent reason." He frowned at the meter. "Could something be wrong with it?" "I've used 3 different meters, Nathan. They all show the same pattern." I lowered my voice. "I'm starting to think. Has your mom been adding sugar to my food?" His eyes widened. "What? No, she wouldn't do that." "Wouldn't she? She keeps insisting I need real food and natural sugar." She rearranged the entire kitchen, threw out my meal prep, and makes tea with honey despite me repeatedly asking her not to. Nathan shook his head. "That's just Mom being old-fashioned about food. She wouldn't deliberately sabotage your health. She thinks my diet is unnecessary," I insisted. "She's said so multiple times." "You're being paranoid," he said, but doubt flickered in his eyes. "Pregnancy hormones." "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't blame this on hormones. Something isn't right, and I need you to believe me." Before he could respond, Deborah bustled in. "Dinner in 20 minutes, dears." "Nathan, would you set the table? Olivia should rest. She looks exhausted." I closed my journal with a snap. "Actually, I need to fix my office." "Oh, we can do that tomorrow," Deborah said dismissively. "The baby clothes need sorting anyway." "No," I said firmly. "I'm doing it now. I have work to finish tonight." Deborah looked to Nathan for support, but he avoided her gaze. "Let's help Olivia set her office back up, Mom. She has an important project. A small victory. Together." We restored my workspace, though the rocking chair remained, a silent reminder of Deborah's vision for my future. At dinner, I picked at the food cautiously. Deborah had prepared salmon with a glaze that she assured me was just lemon and herbs. I took tiny bites, hyper-aware of any sweetness. The conversation remained strained, with Deborah filling silences with stories about Nathan's childhood. "Remember that phase when you'd only wear your Superman cape?" She laughed. "Even to preschool?" Nathan smiled despite the tension. "You were convinced I'd outgrow superheroes by 1st grade." "Mothers know these things," Deborah said, patting his hand. "Just like I know this little one will be artistic. Chen family trait." I set down my fork. "We won't know the baby's traits until they develop them. And they'll be half Rivera, too." Deborah's smile tightened. "Of course, dear. Though dominant genes do tend to prevail." After dinner, while Nathan and Deborah washed dishes, I slipped away to call Zoe. She converted my office into a nursery, I whispered from our bedroom. Without asking. She did what? Zoe's outrage was comforting. That's crossing so many lines. And my blood sugar readings make no sense, I continued. I follow my diet exactly, but they're all over the place. Only at home, though. When I eat at work, they're fine. There was a long pause. Liv, you don't think she's actually messing with your food, do you? The question hung in the air. Saying it aloud to someone else made it sound both ridiculous and terrifyingly plausible. I don't know, I admitted. It sounds crazy, right? Like I'm being paranoid? Not that crazy, Zoe said slowly. Remember my cousin whose mother-in-law was adding dairy to her food because she didn't believe in milk allergies? A chill ran through me. What should I do? Document everything, Zoe advised. And maybe set up a camera? It felt extreme, but so did converting my office without permission. I'll think about it. And call your doctor, Zoe added. Those glucose spikes aren't something to mess around with. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling overwhelmed. Was I overreacting? Was pregnancy making me paranoid? Or was my mother-in-law actually sabotaging my health and, by extension, my baby's? I opened my pregnancy journal, flipping to the glucose tracking pages. The pattern was undeniable. Readings at home were consistently higher than those at work, or when eating out. I'd been attributing it to stress, but what if it was something more deliberate? A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Nathan peeked in. Hey. You okay? I closed the journal. Just tired. He sat beside me, shoulders slumped. I talked to Mom about respecting boundaries. Told her she can't make changes to our home without discussing it with us first. And? She cried. He sighed. Said she feels useless and in the way. That she was only trying to contribute since we're letting her stay rent-free. The guilt trip. Classic Deborah. Nathan, I said carefully, I'm worried about my health, about the baby. These blood sugar spikes aren't normal, and they happen. Most often after eating food your mother prepares. He stiffened. Liv, you can't seriously think. I don't know what to think, I cut in. But my appointment with Dr. Patel is tomorrow, and I'm going to tell her everything. If something happens to this baby because I didn't speak up. Nathan took my hand, his expression troubled. I'll come with you. To the appointment. Relief washed over me. You will? He nodded. Let's get some concrete medical information before we make assumptions. It wasn't a full endorsement of my concerns, but it was something. That night I slept fitfully, dreams filled with rocking chairs that transformed into traps, and tea that turned to syrup in my mouth. Morning came with the smell of pancakes wafting up the stairs. My stomach growled despite my apprehension. I checked my fasting glucose, 148, still elevated. Downstairs, Deborah was flipping golden pancakes on the griddle. Good morning. I made Nathan's favorite, buttermilk pancakes with real maple syrup. My heart sank. Deb, I can't eat those. Oh, I made you something special, she said, gesturing to a smaller plate. Protein pancakes, just egg whites and that protein powder you like. No sugar at all. The gesture seemed genuinely thoughtful. Had I been wrong about her? Maybe Nathan was right about pregnancy making me paranoid. Thank you, I said cautiously, sitting down to examine the pancakes. They looked right. Dense, and less golden than regular pancakes. Nathan joined us, kissing the top of my head before sitting down. These look great, Mom. Nothing but the best for my two favorite people, she beamed. And little Bean, of course. She nodded at my belly. I took a small bite of my pancake. It tasted sweet. Too sweet for plain protein and egg whites. These have sugar in them, I said, setting down my fork. Deborah looked offended. They absolutely do not. I followed that recipe card in your kitchen exactly. Nathan glanced between us. Mom, are you sure? These taste sweet to me too. She huffed. Well, I may have added a tiny bit of maple extract for flavor. That's not sugar, it's just extract. Maple extract is concentrated syrup, Deb. It's basically pure sugar, I explained, pushing the plate away. Oh, for heaven's sake, she exclaimed. A few drops won't hurt. You're being obsessive about this diet. It's not healthy for the baby to deprive yourself. What's not healthy is gestational diabetes left uncontrolled, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. High blood sugar can cause serious complications. In my day, we didn't even test for these things, Deborah insisted. And babies were born just fine. Nathan set down his coffee mug with unusual firmness. Mom, this isn't about what was done in your day. This is about Olivia's health now. If she can't eat sugar, she can't eat sugar. Period. Deborah looked, startled at his directness. I was only trying to make the food palatable. Those diet foods are so bland. They're keeping our baby safe, Nathan said. That's what matters. For once, he'd taken a clear stand. The surge of gratitude I felt was almost dizzying. We should get ready for the doctor's appointment, I said, standing up. I'll make you a proper protein shake, Nathan offered. One I mix myself. The emphasis wasn't lost on any of us. In the car on the way to Dr. Patel's office, Nathan was quiet, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Thank you, I said softly, for standing up for me this morning. He nodded, eyes on the road. I'm starting to see what you mean, about Mom not respecting your needs. A pause. But deliberately sabotaging your food still seems extreme. I opened my pregnancy journal. Look at this pattern, Nathan. High readings after almost every meal at home, normal readings everywhere else. For weeks now. He glanced at the meticulous log, doubt crossing his features. Let's see what the doctor says. Dr. Patel was concerned, to say the least. When I described the pattern of high readings, she immediately ordered an A1C test to check my average blood sugar over the past weeks. This isn't something to take lightly, she told us, her expression serious. Persistent high blood sugar can lead to a larger baby, which increases the risk of birth injuries. It can cause early labor, breathing problems for the baby, and increase the chance of cesarean delivery. There's also an increased risk of stillbirth. Nathan paled. Stillbirth? Dr. Patel nodded grimly. In severe, uncontrolled cases, yes. Which is why we need to get to the bottom of these readings immediately. I took a deep breath. Dr. Patel, I have a concerning theory. My mother-in-law is staying with us. She doesn't believe my diet restrictions are necessary and keeps trying to give me natural sugar despite my objections. She made protein pancakes this morning that turned out to contain maple extract, Nathan added, his voice tight. Dr. Patel's expression darkened. Are you suggesting she's deliberately adding sugar to your food without your knowledge? I don't know, I admitted. But my readings are only elevated after eating food she prepares. Dr. Patel turned to her computer, typing rapidly. I'm ordering comprehensive testing today, and I want you to keep a detailed log of everything you eat, where it was prepared, and by whom. She printed out a form with columns for food, preparer, and glucose readings. Document everything. If someone is interfering with your medical treatment, that's not just frustrating, it's dangerous. The A1C results would take a few days, but Dr. Patel didn't want to wait. She scheduled another appointment for 3 days later and recommended I prepare all my own food in the meantime. In the car afterward, Nathan was silent, staring at the documentation form in my lap. You believe me now, don't you? I asked quietly. He ran a hand over his face. I don't want to. I really don't want to think my mother would endanger our baby. His voice cracked slightly. But those pancakes this morning, and everything Dr. Patel said about the risks. I need you on my side, Nathan, I said, placing a hand on his arm. Whatever happens next, I need to know you're with me and the baby first. He covered my hand with his. I am, I promise. A pause. But we need proof before we confront her. Absolute proof. I nodded. Proof was exactly what I intended to get. The drive home from Dr. Patel's office was tense, raindrops racing each other down the windshield as I clutched the documentation form in my lap. Nathan hadn't spoken since his promise of support, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. What? Are you thinking? I finally asked, unable to bear the silence. He sighed, flicking on the turn signal as we approached our neighborhood. That I feel torn in half. If Mom is really doing this... He shook his head. I just can't imagine why. I gazed out at the familiar craftsman houses lining our street, their front gardens lush from the constant spring rain. Control, I said quietly. It's always been about control. As we pulled into our driveway, Deborah appeared at the front window, curtains parting slightly before falling back into place. Nathan caught the movement too and grimaced. Let me talk to her, he said, putting the car in park. Alone. What? Will you say? I'm not sure yet. But if we both confront her, she'll get defensive. He squeezed my hand. Trust me on this one. I nodded reluctantly. I'll be in my office, putting things back in order. Inside, Deborah greeted us with nervous energy, wiping her hands repeatedly on a dish towel. How was the appointment? Is everything all right with the baby? We need to talk, Mom, Nathan said, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard him use with her. Olivia, could you give us a minute? I retreated to my office, leaving the door cracked just enough to hear their voices drifting from the kitchen. I couldn't make out the exact words, but the tone was clear. Nathan's measured but insistent, Deborah's rising in pitch with indignation. I busied myself reconnecting my computer and organizing the scattered files from Deborah's redecorating attempt. The rocking chair still dominated the center of the room, a physical representation of Deborah's assumptions about my future. With a surge of defiance, I dragged it to the corner, reclaiming my space inch by inch. 20 minutes later, Nathan appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted. Well? I asked, setting down the stack of folders I'd been organizing. He closed the door behind him. She denied everything, he said, voice low. Said she would never do anything to risk her grandchild's health and that you're being... He hesitated. What? Hormonal? Paranoid? Hysterical? I supplied bitterly. Influenced by modern medical fear-mongering, he quoted, running a hand through his hair. She kept saying doctors these days create problems to justify their expensive treatments. I leaned back against my desk. So what now? He sat in my office chair, spinning it to face me. Now we get proof. I told her I'd be preparing all our meals for the next few days until we sort this out. How did she take that? A grimace crossed his features. Not well. She said I was choosing a temporary situation over 34 years of motherly devotion. He reached for my hand. But I reminded her that my priority has to be you and the baby. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he warned. She's hurt and angry, and you know how she gets when she feels cornered. I did. No. Deborah's passive aggression could be more suffocating than outright hostility, manifesting in martyred sighs and meaningful glances, in helpful comments that cut like glass. Dr. Patel's documentation form will help, I said, reaching for my bag to retrieve it. We'll track everything for the next 3 days, then take it from there. Nathan nodded, determination replacing the uncertainty in his eyes. And I have an idea for getting more concrete evidence. What kind of evidence? He lowered his voice further. I'm going to set up my old GoPro in the kitchen. If she's tampering with your food, we'll catch it on camera. The suggestion should have been shocking, spying on his mother in our own home, but after weeks of escalating tensions, it felt like the only way forward. Do it, I agreed. Tonight, after she goes to bed. The rest of the day unfolded in a haze of awkward interactions. Deborah moved through the house like a ghost, sighing dramatically whenever Nathan or I entered a room. When dinner time arrived, Nathan took control of the kitchen as promised, preparing a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables that aligned perfectly with my meal plan. Not even a little marinade? Deborah asked from the doorway, watching Nathan measure olive oil with precision. Herbs and lemon juice are enough, he replied without looking up. She hovered, clearly unaccustomed to being sidelined. The chicken will be so dry. At least let me make a sauce. No, Mom, Nathan said firmly. We're keeping it simple. Deborah's lips compressed into a thin line. I see how it is. She turned to me, standing by the kitchen island. I hope you're satisfied, Olivia. Turning my son against me like this. This isn't about taking sides, I said, keeping my voice level. It's about what's safe for the baby. She scoffed. Safe. In my day, we didn't obsess over every little thing during pregnancy. We lived normal lives, ate normal food, and our babies turned out just fine. Medicine has advanced since then, Nathan interjected, setting down his knife. We know more now. We know more about making money from anxious parents, you mean? Deborah retorted. All these tests and restrictions. It's a racket, plain and simple. I exchanged a glance with Nathan. This kind of thinking could absolutely justify tampering with my food. If she truly believed the dietary restrictions were unnecessary, even harmful in their strictness, wouldn't a loving grandmother-to-be intervene? Mom, Nathan said carefully, this isn't up for debate. Olivia's doctor has given her specific guidelines and we're following them. End of discussion. Deborah drew herself up, wounded dignity in every line of her body. I can see I'm not wanted here. I'll take my dinner. In my room. She turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Though I'm not sure how much longer I should stay where I'm treated like a criminal in my own son's house. After she left, Nathan slumped against the counter. That went well. She's trying to make you feel guilty, I pointed out. Classic. Manipulation. I know. He sighed. But it still works. She raised me alone after Dad left when I was 10. Sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. I placed a hand on his arm. That doesn't give her the right to endanger our child. No, he agreed, straightening. It doesn't. Dinner was quiet, just the two of us at the kitchen table. I checked my blood sugar afterward, 118, perfect for a post-meal reading. See? I showed Nathan the meter. When I eat food that hasn't been tampered with, my numbers are fine. He stared at the reading, the evidence becoming harder to deny. Let's set up the camera tonight. After Deborah had retreated to her room for the evening, earlier than usual, her martyrdom requiring an audience, Nathan retrieved his old GoPro from the garage storage. We positioned it carefully on top of the refrigerator, angled to capture the entire kitchen counter and stove area. It's set to motion activation, he explained in hushed tones. Battery should last about 48 hours on standby. I glanced toward you, the hallway, half expecting to find Deborah lurking. Do you think she suspects anything? I doubt it. She's not exactly tech-savvy. He finished adjusting the tiny camera, its lens barely visible among the decorative plants Deborah had placed atop the fridge. There. Now we wait. Sleep came fitfully that night, my mind racing with possibilities. What would we do if we caught Deborah red-handed? What if we were wrong? The questions chased each other in endless circles until exhaustion finally pulled me under. Morning arrived with the gentle ping of my phone alarm. I reached for the glucose meter on my nightstand, performing my fasting check while still half asleep. The number that appeared jolted me fully awake. 131. Still elevated, despite having eaten nothing since dinner. Nathan stirred beside me. "What is it?" "Fasting glucose still high," I murmured, recording the number. "Could be stress, I guess." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Or something else. Let me check the camera footage before Mom wakes up." While Nathan slipped downstairs, I showered and dressed for work, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in my stomach. What would the footage show? Part of me almost hoped we'd find nothing, that there was some other explanation for my erratic readings that didn't involve deliberate sabotage. When I emerged from the bathroom, Nathan was sitting on the edge of our bed, his face ashen as he stared at his phone. "Nathan, what is it?" He looked up, shock written across his features. "I found something," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You need to see this." I sat beside him, heart hammering as he pressed play on a video clip. The footage, time-stamped 2:17 a.m., showed our kitchen bathed in the dim glow of the nightlight. After a moment, a figure entered the frame, Deborah in her floral robe, moving with purpose toward the refrigerator. She opened it, reaching for the protein shake I'd prepared for my breakfast. With practiced efficiency, she uncapped the bottle, added something from a small container she produced from her pocket, then recapped it and shook it gently before replacing it in the fridge. The entire process took less than 30 seconds. If you didn't know what you were looking for, it might have seemed like a harmless midnight snack preparation. But the furtive glances over her shoulder told another story. "Oh my God," I breathed, a wave of nausea washing over me. "She really is doing it." Nathan's hand trembled as he paused the video. I believed you, but seeing it?" He shook his head, words failing him. "We need to watch her do it again," I said after a moment. "One incident could be explained away. We need a pattern." He nodded mechanically. "I'll make breakfast today. Something she can't easily tamper with." "And I'll take my protein shake to work untouched," I added. "Get a baseline reading after drinking the one she doctored, then compare it to normal protein shakes for the next few days." We moved through the morning routine like actors in a play, going through the motions while our minds raced elsewhere. When Deborah appeared, bright and seemingly remorseful about the previous evening's tension, it took everything in me not to confront her then. "I made coffee," she offered with a tentative smile. "Regular for Nathan, decaf for you, Olivia." "Thanks, Mom," Nathan said, his voice admirably steady as he scrambled eggs at the stove. "But Olivia's taking her protein shake to work today. Big meetings, needs to eat at her desk." Deborah's smile faltered almost imperceptibly. "Oh, but you need a proper breakfast, dear. Let me fix you some toast at least. Whole grain, very nutritious." "No time," I said, retrieving the tampered shake from the fridge, skin crawling as I held the bottle. "But thanks." At work, I dumped the shake into a potted plant in the office kitchen, unable to bring myself to test it directly. What had she added? Sugar? Syrup? Something worse? The thought made my stomach turn. Instead, I purchased a similar protein shake from the cafe downstairs, which proved to be a perfect substitute when my mid-morning glucose check showed a reading of 110. Exactly where it should be. The pattern continued over the next 2 days. Each night, the GoPro captured Deborah slipping into the kitchen at odd hours, tampering with various foods, adding something to my sugar-free yogurt, replacing the almond milk in my designated carton with what appeared to be regular milk, sprinkling an unidentified substance into the container of cucumber slices I'd prepared for snacking. By the 3rd day, we had accumulated 6 separate video clips, each showing the same deliberate sabotage. We also had my glucose log, meticulously documenting the difference between readings after consuming food prepared by Nathan versus the suspicious spikes when I accidentally consumed anything Deborah had access to. The evidence was damning, impossible to explain away as misunderstanding or paranoia. Still, I felt a strange reluctance to move forward with confrontation. Despite everything, Deborah was Nathan's mother, and this would forever change their relationship. "We have the appointment with Dr. Patel tomorrow," I reminded Nathan as we lay in bed Thursday night, the house finally quiet. "We should show her the footage, get her medical opinion documented before we confront your mom." He stared at the ceiling, one arm flung across his forehead. "I still can't understand why. Why would she do this?" I turned on my side to face him. "I have theories. I'm listening. First possibility, she genuinely doesn't believe gestational diabetes is serious. She's mentioned multiple times how doctors invent conditions to make money." Nathan nodded slowly. "Possible. She's always been skeptical of modern medicine." Second theory, she wants me to have complications. The words felt cruel to speak aloud, but they needed to be acknowledged. "If I develop problems, need more rest, maybe have to stop working." "That fits with her constant comments about your job," he admitted, pain evident in his voice. "Third option," I continued, "is that she's trying to make me seem incompetent. If my numbers are all over the place despite me following my diet, the doctor might conclude I'm not managing my condition well, that I'm being irresponsible." "Making you look like a bad mother before the baby's even born," Nathan murmured, the realization dawning in his eyes. Setting herself up as the responsible alternative. "Right. If I can't even take care of myself, how could I possibly manage a newborn while working?" The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Nathan finally turned to face me, his expression resolute. "Whatever her reasons, it stops now. Tomorrow, after the doctor's appointment, we confront her with everything. And then," he took a deep breath, "then she needs to leave." The decision settled between us, weighty but necessary. I reached for his hand in the darkness. "I'm sorry it came to this." "Don't be," he said firmly. "You and the baby are my priority, always." Morning arrived sooner than expected, gray light filtering through the bedroom curtains as rain pattered against the windows. Another typical Portland spring day, though nothing about our situation felt typical anymore. We moved through our morning, routine with practiced caution, Nathan preparing breakfast while I packed my bag for work, including the printed glucose logs and a thumb drive with the video evidence. Deborah watched from the sidelines, her helpful suggestions about better breakfast options falling on deaf ears. "Will you be home for dinner?" she asked as Nathan and I prepared to leave for my appointment, her tone carefully neutral. "I thought I might make that salmon Nathan loves." "We'll probably grab something after the appointment," Nathan replied, not meeting her eyes. "Don't wait up." A flash of suspicion crossed her features. "Both of you? Isn't it just a routine checkup?" Dr. Patel wants to discuss my glucose management with both of us," I explained, the half-truth sticking in my throat, given the inconsistent readings. "Well, I'm sure she'll see that you're being too strict with yourself," Deborah said with manufactured cheerfulness. "A little natural sugar never hurt anyone." If only she knew how telling that statement would prove to be. The drive to Dr. Patel's office was silent, both of us lost in thought about the confrontation to come. The waiting room was busier than usual, filled with pregnant women in various stages, some with partners, others alone. All with normal, supportive families, I imagined bitterly. No one else was dealing with a grandmother-to-be who sabotaged their health. Dr. Patel's expression grew increasingly grave as we presented our evidence. First, the glucose logs showing the clear pattern, then the video footage that confirmed our suspicions beyond any doubt. "I've been practicing obstetrics for 20 years, she said, removing her glasses to pinch the bridge of her nose. I've seen family dynamics create stress during pregnancy, certainly. But this, she gestured to the paused video on Nathan's phone, showing Deborah clearly adding something to my food. This is beyond the pale. What exactly could she be adding? Nathan asked, his voice strained. Dr. Patel shook her head. Based on your glucose responses, likely simple sugars, table sugar, honey, syrup, things that would raise blood glucose quickly but not be immediately detectable by taste in the right amounts. How dangerous is this? I asked, hands protectively cradling my belly. For the baby? She sighed, choosing her words carefully. Your gestational diabetes has been relatively mild so far, which is fortunate. The elevated readings are concerning, but not immediately life-threatening. However, she fixed us with a serious look. Continued unmanaged high blood sugar absolutely poses risks to both you and your baby. We've discussed the potential complications: macrosomia, birth injuries, respiratory issues. Nathan's face had gone pale. So she was putting our baby at risk. Yes, Dr. Patel said simply. Perhaps without fully understanding the medical consequences, but yes. We need documentation of this, I said, pulling out the form she'd given us at our last appointment, for when we confront her, and possibly for after. The implication hung in the air. Legal action wasn't out of the question, though the thought of pressing charges against Nathan's mother seemed extreme, even now. Dr. Patel nodded, taking the form. I'll prepare a formal medical assessment based on the evidence you've provided. She turned to her computer, typing rapidly. I'll also refer you to a maternal-fetal medicine specialist for additional monitoring, just to be thorough. The appointment concluded with a comprehensive examination, additional blood work to check my current A1C levels, and a stack of documentation detailing the medical risks of Deborah's actions. Armed with this clinical evidence, we headed home, the weight of what was to come settling heavily between us. Should we have someone else there? I asked as we pulled into our driveway. For support or as a witness? Nathan considered this. Maybe Zoe? She knows the situation, and Mom doesn't have the same emotional leverage with her. I nodded, sending Zoe a quick text explaining the situation. Her response was immediate and supportive. On my way. Don't confront her until I get there. Inside, Deborah was arranging flowers in the living room, humming to herself as if it were any ordinary day. She looked up as we entered, her smile faltering slightly at our serious expressions. How was the appointment? She asked, adjusting a lily in the vase. We need to talk, Nathan said, his voice carefully controlled. Zoe's coming over, and then we're all going to sit down together. Confusion crossed Deborah's features. Zoe, what does she have to do with the baby? She's my best friend, I said simply. And we need her here. Wariness replaced confusion in Deborah's eyes. Is something wrong? Is it the baby? We'll discuss everything when Zoe arrives, Nathan replied, moving toward the kitchen. I'm making tea. Would you like some? The irony wasn't lost on any of us, offering tea to the woman we'd caught doctoring our drinks. Deborah settled on the couch, smoothing her skirt repeatedly, a nervous habit I'd noticed over the weeks. You're being very mysterious, both of you. We didn't take the bait, retreating to the kitchen where Nathan prepared 3 mugs of tea with exaggerated care, making sure Deborah could see there was nothing added to any of them. Zoe arrived 20 minutes later, her presence a balm to my frayed nerves. She hugged me tightly, whispering, "I've got your back," before greeting Nathan and nodding curtly to Deborah. When we were all seated in the living room, Nathan and I, on one couch, Deborah in the armchair, Zoe perched protectively at my side, the confrontation finally began. Deborah, I started, my voice steadier than I expected. We've noticed a pattern with my glucose readings over the past few weeks. They spike after I consume food that you've had access to, but remain normal when I eat elsewhere or when Nathan prepares my meals. Her expression remained neutral, though her fingers tightened around her mug. As I've said before, those machines aren't always accurate, and stress affects blood sugar too. That's true, I acknowledged, which is why we decided to investigate further. Nathan set his mug down carefully. Mom, we installed a camera in the kitchen. The color drained from Deborah's face. You did what? We have footage, I continued, nodding to Nathan, who produced his phone. Multiple instances over the eye. Past 3 days of you adding substances to my food and drinks during the night. That's preposterous, she sputtered, though the panic in her eyes told another story. I would never. Nathan's hand shook slightly as he queued up the first video. We didn't want to believe it either, Mom, but here's the evidence. He played the clips one after another, Deborah adding something to my protein shake, tampering with my yogurt, switching my almond milk. Each video more damning than the last. Zoe let out a soft gasp beside me, while Deborah's expression cycled through shock, guilt, and finally defiance. You were spying on me, she accused when the final clip ended. Your own mother. You were endangering our baby, Nathan countered, his voice breaking. Why, Mom? Why would you do this? Deborah set her mug down with a sharp click. You don't understand. None of you do. Then explain it to us, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. Help us understand why you would deliberately sabotage my health during pregnancy. She straightened in her seat, a strange calmness settling over her features. These modern diets are nonsense. All these restrictions and rules, they cause more stress than they're worth. I was trying to help you. By adding sugar to my food, without my knowledge? I asked incredulously. By showing you that a normal diet is perfectly fine, she insisted. Look at you, obsessing over every little number, weighing your food, worrying constantly. That can't be good for the baby. Actually, I said, pulling out Dr. Patel's documentation, what's not good for the baby is uncontrolled high blood sugar, which increases the risk of numerous complications. I slid the papers across the coffee table. Dr. Patel has outlined them all here, along with her assessment of the danger your actions have placed us in. Deborah didn't touch the papers. Doctors these days over-medicalize everything. When I was pregnant with Nathan, this isn't about your pregnancy 34 years ago, Nathan cut in, frustration edging his voice. Medicine has advanced. We know more now. And you think you know better than me? Deborah's voice rose. I raised you alone after your father abandoned us. Everything I did was for you. And there it was. The familiar refrain, the emotional manipulation that had worked so effectively on Nathan throughout his life. I watched his face, afraid he might waver, but his expression remained resolute. This isn't about my childhood, Mom. This is about you deliberately endangering my wife and unborn child after being repeatedly told not to. Zoe, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. Mrs. Chen, did you understand that adding sugar to Olivia's food could cause serious medical complications? Deborah's gaze snapped to her. Of course I understood the theory, but I don't believe it. These conditions are invented to control women during pregnancy, to make them fearful and dependent on doctors. So you decided to prove your point by experimenting on me without my consent? The betrayal cut deep, sharper somehow now that she was admitting to it. I was trying to liberate you, Deborah insisted, to show you that all these restrictions are unnecessary. When your numbers were fine despite the forbidden foods, you'd see that you could enjoy your pregnancy without all this medical interference. Except my numbers weren't fine, I pointed out. They were dangerously elevated, exactly as Dr. Patel warned they would be with added sugar. Because you're too suggestible, Deborah exclaimed. You want to believe the doctors, so your body responds accordingly. The circular logic was maddening. I looked to Nathan, who seemed equally frustrated by his mother's resistance to reality. "Mom," he said finally, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What you did was wrong. Medically, ethically, morally wrong. You violated our trust and put Olivia and our baby at risk. I can't allow this to continue." Deborah's expression hardened. "What are you saying, Nathan?" He took a deep breath, reaching for my hand. "I'm saying you need to leave. Today. The why? Mold remediation on your condo was completed last week. Don't think I didn't notice that convenient omission." Shock registered on her face. "You would choose her over your own mother? After everything I've sacrificed for you?" "This isn't about choosing sides," Nathan said firmly. "This is about protecting my family, my wife and child, from someone who has proven they can't be trusted." Tears filled Deborah's eyes. "You don't mean that. You're just confused right now. Olivia has turned you against me." "Olivia has done nothing but try to accommodate you," he replied. "Even when you rearranged her office without permission, even when you criticized her constantly, even when her health was at risk." "I can help you pack," Zoe offered, her tone brooking no argument. "Linda can drive over to pick you up. I already called her." The mention of her friend seemed to penetrate Deborah's denial. She looked between us, perhaps finally realizing the severity of the situation. "You would really ask me to leave?" she asked Nathan, voice small. "Yes," he said simply. "I would. I am." A tense silence filled the room, broken only by the soft patter of rain against the windows. Finally, Deborah stood, smoothing her skirt one last time. "I see." Her voice was ice. "I'll pack my things. Linda can be here in an hour." As she left the room, shoulders rigid with wounded pride, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. This wasn't how any of us had wanted things to turn out, but the alternative, continuing to live with someone who would deliberately endanger our child, was unthinkable. "I'll help her pack," Zoe offered, squeezing my hand before following. Deborah upstairs. When they were gone, Nathan slumped against me, the tension draining from his body. "I never thought it would come to this." "I'm sorry," I whispered, though we both knew I had nothing to apologize for. "Don't be." He straightened, a new resolve in his eyes. "Family isn't just about blood. It's about trust, respect, safety. You and our baby are my family now. My priority." I leaned into him, exhausted but relieved. The confrontation was over, but the healing was just beginning. And as I heard Deborah's footsteps overhead, boxes being packed and a life being separated from ours, I allowed myself to hope that someday, somehow, we might find a way forward that included her, but on very different terms. For now, though, my focus remained on the tiny life growing inside me, finally free from the invisible sabotage that had threatened us both. I placed a hand on my belly, feeling a reassuring flutter in response. "It's going to be okay," I whispered. To the baby, to Nathan, to myself. "We're going to be okay." 3 days passed in blissful quiet. The house felt like our own again, the oxygen returning to rooms that had been suffocating under Deborah's presence. Nathan and I fell into an easy rhythm, preparing meals together, talking about the baby, reclaiming spaces that had subtly been taken over during the previous weeks. My glucose readings stabilized almost immediately, each normal number, a quiet vindication. But peace rarely lasts uninterrupted. "She's called 17 times since yesterday," Nathan said, staring at his phone as we ate breakfast, and left 8 voicemails. I set down my fork, the brief honeymoon period officially over. "What did she say?" "I haven't listened yet. I'm not sure I want to." I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. We knew this was coming. She wasn't going to just accept being asked to leave. "I know." He sighed, running his free hand through his hair. "I just hoped for More time before the guilt offensive began. "Do you want me to listen to them first?" I offered. He shook his head. "No, this is my responsibility." He picked up the phone, tapping the voicemail icon and putting it on speaker between us. Deborah's voice filled the kitchen, tight with controlled emotion. "Nathan, it's your mother. I'm sure by now you've realized you overreacted. I'm willing to forget this unpleasantness if you'll just call me back so we can talk, like adults." The second message was similar, though with an added edge. "Nathan, this is ridiculous. You can't just cut your mother out of your life over a simple misunderstanding. Call me back." By the sixth voicemail, the veneer of reasonableness had cracked. "I don't know what lies Olivia has been feeding you, but I raised you better than this, Nathan Chen. After everything I sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me? By choosing that woman over your own mother?" The final message, left at 2:17 a.m., was barely coherent through tears. "Nathan, please. I was only trying to help. You're making a terrible mistake. She's turned you against me. My own son." Nathan stopped the playback, his expression pained. "There's nothing new in any of these. Same manipulation tactics she's always used when she doesn't get her way." "Are you going to call her back?" I asked gently. He shook his head. "Not yet. Not until I've had time to process everything. Dr. Patel recommended that counselor for both of us, right? I think I need that perspective first." I nodded, relieved. I made an appointment for tomorrow. Family systems therapy with Dr. Winters. She specializes in pregnancy and postpartum family dynamics. "Good." He squeezed my hand. "We'll figure this out together." The rest of the day passed in a haze of normalcy that felt almost startling after weeks of tension. I worked from home, catching up on projects that had fallen behind during the crisis with Deborah. Nathan retreated to his home office for Zoom meetings, the muffled sound of his voice discussing coding protocols drifting down the hallway. Ordinary. Peaceful. Hours. Until the doorbell rang at 3:42 p.m. I peered through the peephole, my heart sinking at the sight of Linda, Deborah's faithful friend, standing on our porch clutching a large manila envelope. "Olivia?" I announced, opening the door. "Nathan's in a meeting." Linda shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, it's you I need to speak with." I stepped back, allowing her inside but keeping my guard up. "What's this about?" "Deborah asked me to give you this." She thrust the envelope toward me. "I told her I wouldn't get involved, but she's not doing well, Olivia." I accepted the envelope without opening it. "I'm sorry to hear that, but after what she did—" I know. Linda held up her hands. "What she did was wrong. Inexcusable, even. I've told her as much. That surprised me." "You have?" Linda nodded, her expression serious. "I've been friends with Deborah for 20 years, but I don't condone what she did. Tampering with a pregnant woman's food? That crosses every line." She gestured to the envelope. "But I still think you should read what she has to say." I set the envelope on the entry table. "I'll look at it after Nathan gets out of his meeting. We're handling this together." "Fair enough." Linda turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think she's genuinely remorseful. Not just about getting caught, but about what she did. After Linda left, I stared at the envelope, as if it might bite. What could Deborah possibly say that would make any difference? What explanation could justify deliberately endangering her own grandchild? When Nathan emerged from his office an hour later, I showed him the envelope. Linda dropped it off. "From your mother." His expression darkened. "More manipulation?" "I haven't opened it. I was waiting for you." He picked up the envelope, weighing it in his hand. "Part of me wants to throw this away unopened." "Would that give you peace?" I asked quietly. He considered the question, then shook his head. "No. I'd always wonder. Together, we sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. Inside were several pages of handwritten text. Deborah's neat, precise handwriting covering sheet after sheet of expensive stationery. Nathan began reading aloud. Nathan and Olivia, I've written this letter a dozen times, tearing up each attempt as inadequate. How does one apologize for something so fundamentally wrong? There's no excuse for what I did, though my mind has manufactured many in a desperate attempt to justify my actions to myself. The truth is painful but simple. I was afraid of becoming irrelevant in your lives. When you told me about the pregnancy, Nathan, all I could see was my own obsolescence. A new family forming that wouldn't need me. A grandchild I would visit. Occasionally, but never truly know. A daughter-in-law who had her own mother to guide her through motherhood. Then Olivia mentioned her mother had passed away, and I saw an opportunity, a role I could fill, a way to make myself necessary. But Olivia didn't need me the way I needed to be needed. She was competent, prepared, independent. Everything I had never been allowed to be in my own marriage. When the gestational diabetes diagnosis came, I convinced myself it was an overreaction by modern medicine. In my day, we didn't test for such things. But that's no excuse. I knew Olivia was following doctor's orders, and I deliberately undermined those orders. I told myself I was liberating her from unnecessary restrictions, but the truth is, I was trying to prove I knew better. That my experience trumped medical science. It was arrogant, dangerous, and unforgivable. I understand why you asked me to leave. I would have done the same in your position. A mother's first duty is to protect her child, and Olivia was doing exactly that, protecting the baby from me. From her grandmother, who should have been another layer of protection, not a source of danger. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you both to know that I am seeking help. Linda has connected me with a therapist who specializes in family transitions and generational trauma. I've had 2 sessions already. It's painful work, confronting the patterns I've perpetuated, the manipulation tactics I learned from my own mother and deployed without questioning. I won't contact you again after this letter. The choice to reconnect, if ever, must be yours. I've included the contact information for my therapist, should you wish to verify that I'm getting help or eventually pursue any kind of mediated reconciliation. Nathan, I love you more than life itself. That love became distorted by my fear of losing you, but at its core, it remains true. Olivia, I robbed us of the opportunity to build a genuine relationship as mother and daughter-in-law. That may be my greatest regret. I wish you both peace, health, and joy with your baby. Mom, Deborah. Silence filled the kitchen as Nathan set down the final page. I studied his face, trying to gauge his reaction to this unexpected vulnerability from a woman who had always weaponized her emotions. What do you think? I finally asked. He exhaled slowly. I think. It sounds genuine, more genuine than I've heard her sound in years. The therapy part surprised me, I admitted. Me too. Mom has always been dismissive of paying strangers to listen to your problems. He shuffled the pages, rereading sections. But that means she's actually reflecting on what happened, not just making excuses. It doesn't erase what she did. I pointed out gently, no, it doesn't. He met my eyes. And it doesn't automatically earn her a place back in our lives. But it's a start. I nodded, processing my own complicated feelings. The part about Deborah seeing an opportunity when she learned my mother had passed, it struck painfully close to home. I had been missing maternal guidance during my pregnancy, though I'd barely admitted it to myself. In different circumstances, a supportive mother-in-law relationship might have been healing. Let's talk about it with Dr. Winters tomorrow, I suggested. Get a professional perspective before we decide anything. Nathan agreed, and we set the letter aside, returning to our evening routine. but Deborah's words lingered in my mind as I checked my glucose, normal, prepared for bed, and felt the baby kick against my palm while I lay awake long after Nathan had fallen asleep. The next morning, we arrived at Dr. Winter's office 15 minutes early, both of us anxious about the session. The waiting room was warmly decorated with comfortable furniture and soft lighting, designed to put nervous clients at ease. It wasn't working. I fidgeted with my pregnancy journal while Nathan leafed through a parenting magazine without seeming to actually read it. Dr. Winters herself was a surprise, younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with a riot of curly hair and a warm smile that reached her eyes. She welcomed us into her office, where 3 comfortable chairs were arranged in a small circle. "So," she began after we'd settled in, "Dr. Patel referred you. Why don't you tell me what brings you here today?" Nathan and I exchanged glances, silently deciding who would start. I nodded for him to begin. He took a deep breath and launched into the story. His mother moving in temporarily, her increasingly controlling behavior, our discovery of her tampering with my food, and finally the confrontation and her letter of apology. Dr. Winters listened, attentively, occasionally making notes but mostly maintaining eye contact, her expression compassionate but neutral. When Nathan finished, she turned to me. "Olivia, is there anything you'd like to add from your perspective?" I shared my initial attempts to accommodate Deborah, the tension over my work and the nursery plans, and my growing fear as my glucose numbers became erratic. I started to doubt myself, I admitted, wondering if I was being paranoid or overly sensitive. "Gaslighting," Dr. Winters nodded. "A common dynamic in controlling relationships. You are made to question your own perception of reality." "Exactly," I said, relieved at being understood. Even after we had video evidence, part of me still wondered if I was overreacting. Dr. Winters set her notepad aside. "You weren't. What Deborah did was dangerous and violated multiple boundaries: medical, personal, and trust. Your reaction was entirely appropriate." The validation loosened something in my chest, a tension I hadn't realized I was still carrying. "Now," she continued, "tell me about this letter. How did it make each of you feel?" Nathan spoke first. "Conflicted. It sounds more genuine than anything Mom's said in years, but I also know how skilled she is at emotional manipulation. I want to believe she's really getting help, but I'm not sure I can trust it." I nodded in agreement. There were parts that rang true, especially about her fear of becoming irrelevant. But it doesn't change what she did or the risk she created. "Those are very reasonable responses," Dr. Winters assured us. "Trust, once broken, isn't easily or quickly restored, especially when the violation was so serious." "So what do we do?" Nathan asked, the question that had been haunting both of us. "Do we cut her out completely? Try to reconcile? Something in between?" Dr. Winters leaned forward slightly. "That's entirely your decision, and you don't need to make it today. But I can offer some framework for thinking about it." She held up one finger. "First, your priority must remain the health and safety of Olivia and your baby. Any contact with Deborah needs to be evaluated against that standard." We both nodded firmly in agreement. "Second," she continued, "if you do decide to allow Deborah back into your lives in some capacity, it should be a gradual process with clear boundaries and consequences. Trust is rebuilt in small increments, not grand gestures." "What would that look like practically?" I asked. "It might start with verified information, confirming she's actually in therapy, perhaps eventually a joint session with her therapist. Then perhaps brief public meetings. No overnight stays, no unsupervised time, no food preparation." She looked at us each in turn. "The pace would be set by you, not by Deborah's demands or timetable." "And if we decide we don't want any contact?" Nathan asked, his voice strained. That's a valid choice too, Dr. Winters said gently. Some breaches of trust are too significant to repair. Only you can determine if this is one of those situations. We discussed various scenarios for the remainder of the session, exploring our feelings about each potential path forward. By the time our hour concluded, we hadn't made any firm decisions, but the options felt clearer, less overwhelming. I'd like to see you both again, Dr. Winters said as we prepared to leave, individually and as a couple. There's a lot to process here, and you're doing it while preparing for a major life transition with the baby. We scheduled follow-up appointments, thanked her, and walked to our car in thoughtful silence. The spring rain had cleared, leaving the air fresh and the sky a brilliant blue, a welcome contrast to the emotional complexity we were navigating. Coffee? Nathan suggested, nodding toward a cafe across from the therapist's office. Decaf. For me? But yes, I agreed, grateful for the chance to decompress before returning home. Seated by the window with steaming mugs between us, we finally broached the subject we'd been circling. I'm not ready to see her yet, I said quietly. I need more time. Nathan nodded, relief flickering across his features. Me too. It's too fresh, and I'm still sorting through a lifetime of patterns with her. But I don't want to say never, I continued, surprising myself with the realization. Especially with the baby coming. If she's genuinely getting help, genuinely changing, I'd want our child to know their grandmother. Under the right circumstances, Nathan qualified. With solid boundaries and clear consequences if they're violated. Exactly. I wrapped my hands around my mug, drawing comfort from its warmth. Maybe we start by verifying she's in therapy? Dr. Winters mentioned that as a first step. I can call the therapist she listed in her letter, Nathan agreed, just to confirm she's a patient. No details needed beyond that. It was a small step, but it felt right, cautious but not closed off to possibility. We finished our coffee and lighter conversation, discussing nursery colors and a birth class we'd signed up for the following week. That evening, while Nathan cooked dinner, I found myself standing in the doorway of our small second bedroom, the real nursery, not the office Deborah had tried to convert. The room was mostly empty, waiting for the furniture we'd ordered and the decorating we'd planned to do together. A blank slate, full of possibility. My phone buzzed with an incoming email. Opening it, I found a message from Kelly, my boss, with the subject line, "Thinking of you." Olivia, just checking in to see how you're doing with everything. The team misses you in the office, but I'm glad you're taking some days to work from home and take care of yourself. The Harriman campaign is progressing well. Your strategic framework was spot on, as usual. Let me know if you need anything. Whether it's work accommodations, someone to vent to, or just a normal adult conversation that doesn't revolve around pregnancy or in-laws, I'm here. Also, the leadership team has approved the flexible return-to-work proposal you submitted. Full details to follow in an official capacity, but I wanted you to know that piece is secured. Your position will be waiting for you, with the part-time transition schedule you requested for the first 3 months back. Take care of yourself and that baby, Kelly. Tears pricked at my eyes. Tears of relief and gratitude. One major source of stress that Deborah had tried to exploit had just been resolved. My career path was secure, with the flexibility I'd need as a new mother. Another piece falling into place. I forwarded the email to Nathan with a simple message. One more thing going right. His reply came seconds later. Amazing news. This calls for celebration dinner. How do you feel about that wild salmon you've been craving? Smiling, I headed to the kitchen, where Nathan was already pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. As I washed my hands to help with dinner preparation, I noticed my reflection in the window above the sink. The subtle roundness of my face, the fullness of my pregnancy now obvious even from this angle. 26 weeks along, with so much still to navigate before our baby arrived. But for the first time in weeks, the path ahead felt manageable. We had professional support, medical oversight, work security, and each other. Whether Deborah would eventually be part of our family's future remained uncertain, but the decision would be made thoughtfully, not reactively, with the well-being of our child as the guiding principle. The next 2 weeks settled into a new rhythm. Nathan verified that Deborah was indeed seeing the therapist she'd mentioned, Dr. Levinson, who specialized in family systems and intergenerational patterns. We continued our own sessions with Dr. Winters, sometimes together, sometimes separately, untangling the complex web of emotions the situation had created. Deborah kept her word about not contacting us again, though Linda provided occasional updates when we asked, saying only that Deborah was doing the work and respecting our request for space. My glucose levels remained perfectly stable, each normal reading a small victory and confirmation that our decision to remove Deborah had been medically necessary. Dr. Patel was pleased with my progress, reducing the frequency of monitoring slightly, as the numbers consistently fell within target ranges. The baby's growth has normalized, she told us at my 28-week appointment, pointing to measurements on the ultrasound. No signs of macrosomia now that your glucose is controlled. Nathan squeezed my hand as we watched our daughter's profile on the screen, her tiny hands opening and closing near her face. "That's our little fighter," he murmured. "Indeed," Dr. Patel agreed. "And how are things at home? Any more food tampering incidents?" "No," I assured her. "Deborah is still living at her condo. We haven't seen her since the confrontation." The doctor nodded approvingly. "Good. Your health and the baby's health must remain the priority." She handed me a printout of the ultrasound images. "Everything looks on track for a healthy delivery at term, assuming glucose control continues." As we left the medical center, my phone buzzed with a notification. Zoe had sent a link to a news article with the message, "Is this what Deborah was talking about?" I opened the link to find a local news story about a medical researcher at Portland General who had been suspended for falsifying gestational diabetes research data. The researcher had apparently been inflating the risks of the condition to secure additional grant funding. "Nathan, look at this," I said, showing him the article as we walked to the car. He frowned as he read. "This doesn't change anything about your diagnosis or treatment. This is one researcher at one hospital, not the entire medical consensus on gestational diabetes." "I know that," I agreed. "But I bet Deborah will see this as vindication of her beliefs." "Probably," he sighed. "People tend to latch onto anything that confirms their existing views." "Should we be concerned about her sending this to us or trying to use it to reopen communication?" Nathan considered this as he unlocked the car. "If she does, it would tell us she hasn't changed as much as her letter suggested. Real growth would mean understanding that one fraudulent researcher doesn't invalidate established medical science." I nodded, relieved by his perspective. "You're right. And she hasn't reached out directly, which is a good sign." "One day at a time," he reminded me, our new mantra for navigating this complicated situation. Later that evening, as we assembled the crib that had finally been delivered, I found myself thinking about family, the one I'd grown up with, the one I'd married into, and the new one we were creating. My own mother had been gone for 5 years, taken by an aggressive cancer before she could know I was pregnant, before she could share her wisdom about motherhood. My father had remarried and moved to Arizona, present in my life but distant both geographically and emotionally. Nathan's family was now fractured by his mother's actions, his relationship with her fundamentally altered. He had no siblings, and his father had never been in the picture. Our baby would be born into a smaller family circle than either of us had imagined. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, noticing my pensive expression as he tightened the last bolt on the crib. "Family," I said simply. "Who we have, who we've lost, who we might reconcile with someday." He set down the screwdriver and joined me on the floor where I was sorting through tiny clothes. I've been thinking about that too, about what family means beyond blood. Zoe will be an amazing honorary aunt, I offered. And Kelly has practically adopted you professionally, he added with a smile. Plus the neighbors across the street with the twins, they've already offered hand-me-downs and babysitting. We'll create the family our daughter needs, I said, folding a ridiculously small onesie with care, related or not. Speaking of family, Nathan said hesitantly, I had an idea about my mom. Not now, but maybe. Eventually. I set down the clothing. I'm listening. What if we invited her to meet with us in Dr. Winter's? Not at our home, but in the therapist's office. A controlled, mediated environment where we could potentially start rebuilding some kind of relationship. The suggestion wasn't entirely unexpected. Despite everything, I knew Nathan struggled with the complete separation from his only parent. And part of me, a small, cautious part, wondered if there was a version of Deborah that could be a positive presence in our child's life. Not until after the baby is born, I stipulated. I don't want any additional stress during pregnancy. Agreed, he said quickly. And only if she's been consistently in therapy, and with clear boundaries established beforehand. I considered the proposal, weighing the potential benefits against the risks. I think I'd be open to that. Eventually, one meeting with professional mediation to see if there's any foundation to build on. The relief in Nathan's eyes was palpable. Thank you for even considering it. She's your mother, I said simply, and our daughter's grandmother. If there's any chance of a healthy relationship, we should explore it. But cautiously, with eyes wide open, he leaned over to kiss me softly. I love you. Your capacity for grace, even after everything that happened. Oh, it's not grace, I corrected gently. It's pragmatism. Family relationships are complex, and cutting someone off completely is a last resort. We're not there yet, but we're also not naive about what happened. We finished assembling the nursery furniture in companionable conversation, discussing potential names for our daughter, still undecided, birth plan preferences, flexible but with clear priorities, and the upcoming baby shower that Zoe and my college roommate were organizing, smaller than originally planned, with Deborah's absence an unspoken reality. That night, as rain drummed steadily on the roof, I lay awake feeling our daughter's increasingly strong movements. Nathan's arm draped protectively across my belly, his breathing deep and even in sleep. Despite the complexity of our family situation, a profound sense of peace had settled over me. Whatever came next, whether reconciliation with Deborah or permanent estrangement, a smooth birth or complications, an easy transition to parenthood or the more likely bumpy reality, we would face it together, eyes open, boundaries firm, priorities clear. The baby kicked forcefully as if emphasizing the point. I smiled in the darkness, whispering to her, "That's right, little one. We've got this. All of us." The weeks slipped by, each one bringing me closer to my due date and further from the crisis with Deborah. My third trimester arrived with the summer heat, turning Portland into a sweltering backdrop for my increasingly uncomfortable pregnancy. Nathan installed window air conditioning units in our bedroom and the nursery, creating cool sanctuaries where I could escape when the heat became unbearable. Dr. Patel continued to monitor my condition closely, but without Deborah's interference, my gestational diabetes remained well controlled through diet and exercise. The baby's growth tracked perfectly on the charts, a consistent source of relief at each appointment. "You're doing everything right," Dr. Patel assured me at my 32-week checkup. "At this point, I see no reason why you can't have this birth experience you're hoping for." That validation meant more than she could know. After weeks of having my competence questioned and undermined by Deborah, the doctor's confidence in me served as a powerful counterbalance, rebuilding my trust in my own body and instincts. The baby shower Zoe organized was a welcome celebration. Intimate and thoughtful, with close friends and colleagues gathering in our backyard under string lights and paper lanterns. Kelly from work presented me with a signed card from the entire team, along with a surprisingly stylish diaper bag that doubled as a professional-looking laptop carrier. "For when you're ready to come back," she explained with a wink. Practical, but still you. The absence of family, both my distant father and Nathan's estranged mother, hung in the air unacknowledged, but the warmth of our chosen community more than compensated. These were the people who had supported us through the crisis, who had validated our experiences and decisions, who would help us navigate the early days of parenthood. As guests mingled over mocktails and finger foods, Zoe pulled me aside, her expression unusually serious. "Linda called me this morning." My stomach tightened. "About Deborah?" She nodded. "Apparently, she's completed some intensive therapy program. 2 months of weekly individual sessions plus a support group for parents transitioning to grandparenthood or something like that." "That's good, I guess," I said cautiously. "Is she still respecting our boundaries?" "Yes, that's actually why Linda called. Deborah wanted to send a gift for the baby but didn't want to overstep by contacting you directly. She asked Linda to check if that would be welcome or unwanted." I considered this, absently rubbing my belly as our daughter shifted position. The question wasn't simple. Accepting a gift could signal openness to reconciliation before we were ready, but refusing it might close doors we'd eventually want to explore. "Let me talk to Nathan," I finally said. "This decision needs to be mutual." When I shared the news with Nathan that evening, after our guests had departed, his reaction mirrored my own complicated feelings. "A gift seems harmless enough," he said, helping me lower myself onto the couch, my movements increasingly awkward as my pregnancy advanced. "But it could also be the thin edge of the wedge, a way back into our lives on her terms rather than ours." "Exactly." I settled against the cushions, relieved to be off my swollen feet. "And timing matters. We agreed not to address reconciliation until after the baby arrives." Nathan sat beside me, thoughtful. "What if we suggested she donate to the hospital's NICU fund in the baby's name instead? It's a gesture that honors our child without creating an obligation for direct contact, and it benefits other babies as well." The solution was elegant, acknowledging Deborah's desire to celebrate her grandchild while maintaining our boundaries and redirecting her energy toward something positive. "That's perfect," I agreed, genuinely thoughtful while still keeping appropriate distance. Nathan relayed our decision to Linda the next day. Her response was encouraging. Deborah had accepted the alternative with grace, making a generous donation and requesting no acknowledgement beyond knowing we were aware of it. "It's a small thing," Dr. Winters noted when we shared this development during our next therapy session, "but potentially significant. She's demonstrating respect for your boundaries while still finding a way to express her connection to the baby. That shows progress." "It doesn't erase what happened," I pointed out. "No, it doesn't," she agreed. "Reconciliation, if you choose. To pursue it will be a long road with many small steps. This is just one of them." With that piece settled, we refocused on preparing for the baby's arrival. Nathan took paternity leave preparation seriously, meeting with his team to ensure smooth coverage during his planned absence. I finalized arrangements with Kelly for my maternity leave, satisfied that my projects would be well managed during the 3 months I'd be away. The nursery came together beautifully, the soft green walls I'd originally envisioned paired with natural wood furniture and whimsical animal prints. Nothing like the pink-saturated traditional nursery Deborah had tried to force upon us. While organizing the changing table supplies one afternoon, I came across something unexpected. A small wooden box tucked behind packages of diapers and wipes. Opening it revealed a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a compass rose. "Nathan," I called, confused by the discovery. He appeared in the doorway, a guilty smile spreading across his face. "You weren't supposed to find that yet." "What is it?" I asked, lifting the bracelet carefully. He came to sit beside me on the floor. "It's a gift for after the baby is born. The compass is because you've been our true north through all of this. Steady, reliable, pointing the way forward even when the path wasn't clear." Tears welled in my eyes, pregnancy hormones amplifying the wave of emotion his thoughtfulness triggered. "It's beautiful." "There's room to add more charms," he explained, closing the box gently. "Milestones, memories, meaningful moments. I thought it could be something just for you, apart from all the baby gifts and mom-focused presents. Something to remind me I'm still Olivia, not just someone's mother," I translated, leaning against him gratefully. "Exactly," he kissed. The top of my head. "No matter what happens with the baby, with my mom, with anything, you are still you. That's important." The gesture touched me deeply, not just for its thoughtfulness, but for what it represented. Nathan's complete understanding of my fears about losing myself in motherhood. Something Deborah had actively encouraged with her constant emphasis on maternal sacrifice. Even now, with Deborah physically absent from our lives, we were still unwinding her influence, still discovering the subtle ways her perspective had shaped Nathan's understanding of family roles and expectations. Our ongoing therapy sessions helped illuminate these patterns, allowing us to consciously choose which traditions to preserve and which to discard as we built our own family culture. As my due date approached, we finished the practical preparations, hospital bag packed, pediatrician selected, car seat installed and inspected. The nursery stood ready, diapers stacked neatly beside tiny clothes washed in fragrance-free detergent. Everything waited in perfect order for the precious chaos a newborn would bring. But life rarely follows our carefully laid plans. 37 weeks and 5 days, Dr. Patel announced at what should have been a routine checkup. Baby's in perfect position, good size, strong heartbeat. She smiled, snapping off her gloves. "You've managed the diabetes beautifully. I couldn't ask for better control." I beamed at the praise, exchanging a proud glance with Nathan. After everything we'd been through, this validation felt like a significant victory. "Any questions before you go?" Dr. Patel asked, updating my chart. "Actually, yes," I said, gesturing to my feet propped on the examination table's step. "The swelling in my ankles seems worse today, and I had a bit of a headache this morning. Anything I should be concerned about?" Her expression shifted, professional focus replacing casual friendliness. "Let's check your blood pressure again." The cuff tightened around my arm, the machine beeping as it completed its reading. Dr. Patel studied the numbers, her brow furrowing slightly. 140/90, she reported. "That's elevated from your baseline." "Is that bad?" Nathan asked, instantly alert. "It's concerning," she replied carefully, "especially combined with the increased swelling and headache. I'd like to run some additional tests to rule out preeclampsia." The word hung in the air, like a storm cloud. "Preeclampsia can be serious if left untreated," Dr. Patel explained, her tone measured but urgent. "I want to admit you for observation and additional testing." Nathan's face went pale. "Is the baby in danger?" "Both Olivia and the baby need close monitoring," she replied. "Preeclampsia affects the mother's vascular system, which can impact blood flow to the placenta. The good news is you're already past 37 weeks, so if we need to deliver early, the baby's lungs should be mature." My mind raced, trying to process this sudden shift. Just moments ago, we'd been celebrating my perfect glucose control, and now we were discussing potential early delivery. The disconnect was jarring. "How soon would I need to deliver?" I asked, protectively cradling my belly. Dr. Patel's expression softened. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, We need to confirm the diagnosis with blood and urine tests. If it is preeclampsia, the severity will determine our next steps. Mild cases can sometimes be managed with bed rest and close monitoring, but more severe cases require delivery, as that's the only true cure. Within an hour, I found myself in a hospital bed, an IV in my arm, and a parade of medical professionals, coming and going from my room. Blood pressure cuff, blood draws, urine tests, fetal monitoring, each procedure adding another piece to the diagnostic puzzle. Nathan remained at my side, his worry evident in the tight set of his shoulders despite his reassuring words. "Everything's going to be fine," he said, perhaps more to himself than to me. "Dr. Patel knows what she's doing." I squeezed his hand. "I know. It's just not how I pictured spending today." A nurse entered with another blood pressure cuff. "Time for another reading, Mrs. Chen." The routine had become familiar already. Extend, arm, remain still, breathe normally. The machine beeped, and the nurse frowned slightly at the display. 150/95, she noted, recording the number on my chart. "Still elevated." "Is it getting worse?" I asked, anxiety tightening my chest. "Dr. Patel will discuss the overall pattern with you," she replied diplomatically. "She should be back with your test results soon." After the nurse left, Nathan paced the small room, his composure finally cracking. "I should call someone. Zoe? Kelly? They should know what's happening." "Let's wait until we have more information," I suggested, though I understood his need to take action, to do something tangible in a situation largely beyond our control. Dr. Patel returned as evening shadows lengthened across the hospital room. Her serious expression confirmed what the ongoing tests had suggested. "The protein levels in your urine are elevated, and your blood work shows some concerning markers," she began. "Combined with the persistent high blood pressure and symptoms, we're looking at preeclampsia." Though we'd been bracing for this diagnosis, hearing it confirmed sent a wave of fear through me. "What happens now?" "Given that you're almost 38 weeks along and your symptoms are moderate but worsening, I recommend induction," she said. "We can start the process tonight, with the goal of delivery within the next 24-48 hours." "Tonight?" Nathan echoed, sinking into the chair beside my bed. "That soon?" Dr. Patel nodded. "Preeclampsia can escalate quickly, potentially leading to seizures, liver damage, or placental abruption. I don't want to alarm you unnecessarily, but the safest course for both mother and baby is delivery." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Then that's what we'll do. I'll give you some time to process and make any calls you need to," Dr. Patel said. "The induction team will be in shortly to explain the procedure and get started." After she left, Nathan and I sat in stunned silence for several moments. All our careful birth plans, the labor positions we'd practiced, the playlist we'd created, the subtle lighting we'd planned for the delivery room, suddenly seemed irrelevant. Our baby was coming now, ready or not. "I should call Zoe," I finally said, "and you should update your team at work." Nathan nodded mechanically, pulling out his phone. "Should we tell my mother?" The question hung in the air between us. Despite our cautious progress toward potential reconciliation, we hadn't planned to involve Deborah until well after the baby's birth. But now, with medical complications and an emergency induction, the calculus felt different. "Let's wait," I decided. "At least until we know more about how this is going to go. I don't want to manage her reactions on top of everything else right now." He looked relieved. "Agreed. One thing at a time." The next several hours passed in a blur of medical interventions and waiting. The induction process began with medication to soften my cervix, followed by a synthetic version of oxytocin to stimulate contractions. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting IV rates, taking vitals. My blood pressure remained stubbornly elevated despite medication, reinforcing Dr. Patel's decision to move forward with delivery. By midnight, Early labor had begun in earnest, each contraction stronger than the last. Nathan remained steadfastly by my side, offering ice chips, back pressure, and encouragement as I worked through each wave of pain. "You're doing amazingly," he murmured, wiping my forehead with a cool cloth. "Just like we practiced, breathe through it." I tried to focus on his voice, on the techniques we'd learned in our birth classes, but the reality of labor, especially induced labor, was more intense than I'd anticipated. The contractions came hard and fast, with little recovery, time between them. At 3:17 a.m., after checking my progress, Dr. Patel delivered unwelcome news. "You're at 6 centimeters, but your blood pressure is continuing to rise despite medication. The baby's heart rate is showing some concerning patterns during contractions." "What does that mean?" Nathan asked, fatigue and worry etched across his face. "It means we may need to consider a cesarean section if things don't improve soon," she explained. "I'm going to give it another hour to see if your labor progresses and the baby's heart rate stabilizes. In the meantime, we're going to start magnesium sulfate to prevent seizures, which is a standard precaution for preeclampsia." The magnesium made me feel flushed and slightly disoriented, adding another layer of discomfort to the already challenging labor. Through it all, Nathan remained my anchor, his steady presence a reminder that regardless of how our baby arrived, we would face it together. By 4:30 a.m., Dr. Patel's expression told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. "The baby's heart rate is showing persistent late decelerations, which suggests she's not tolerating labor well. Your blood pressure is now 165/105 despite maximum medication. I strongly recommend we proceed with a cesarean section." Though disappointment washed over me, concern for our daughter overrode all other emotions. "Let's do it. Whatever keeps her safe." The operating room was brighter and colder than I'd imagined, the clinical atmosphere a stark contrast to the dim private labor room. A blue surgical drape was raised across my midsection, separating me from the surgical field while allowing Nathan, now dressed in scrubs, to sit by my head. "You'll feel pressure and movement, but no pain," the anesthesiologist assured me as the spinal block took effect, numbing me from the chest down. Nathan held my hand tightly as Dr. Patel and her surgical team worked on the other side of the drape. The sensation was strange. Pressure and tugging without pain, my body seemingly disconnected from itself. "Almost there," Dr. Patel announced. "Dad, get your camera ready." A moment later, a strong, indignant cry filled the operating room. "She's here," Dr. Patel called out. "Beautiful baby girl, great color, excellent lungs." The surgical nurse briefly held our daughter above the drape, red-faced, slick with vernix, and absolutely perfect. Nathan's eyes filled with tears as he snapped photos, his hand shaking visibly. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "Olivia, she's perfect." 8 pounds, 1 ounce, someone called out. Apgar scored 9 out of 10. After a quick assessment, the nurse brought our swaddled daughter to us, placing her against my chest. Despite the clinical surroundings, the medication fogging my thoughts, and the unexpected nature of her arrival, the moment our eyes met transcended everything. She was here. She was healthy. We had made it. "Hello, Emma," I murmured, the name we'd finally settled on just days earlier. "Welcome to the world." Nathan leaned down, gently stroking her cheek with one finger. "Emma Grace Chen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Born August 17th at 4:52 a.m. As Dr. Patel completed the surgery, closing the incision and ensuring everything was stable, I couldn't take my eyes off our daughter. Her tiny features, her rosebud mouth working in sleep, the perfect curl of her fingers around Nathan's thumb, each detail more miraculous than the last. The recovery period passed in a haze of pain medication, frequent vital checks, and the steep learning curve of breastfeeding. My blood pressure remained elevated for the first 24 hours, but began to stabilize by the second day, allowing Dr. Patel to gradually reduce the magnesium sulfate that had left me feeling so disoriented. Preeclampsia typically resolves within 48 hours of delivery, she explained during rounds on our third day. Your numbers are looking much better, though we'll continue to monitor you closely for the next few weeks. Emma thrived from the start, latching well for feedings and passing all her newborn screenings with flying colors. Despite the dramatic circumstances of her birth, she proved to be a remarkably calm baby, regarding the world with curious dark eyes that mirrored Nathan's. Zoe visited on the second day, bringing flowers and taking dozens of photos. She's absolutely gorgeous, she gushed, carefully holding Emma. And you look amazing for someone who just had major surgery while dealing with a potentially life-threatening condition. I laughed weakly from my hospital bed. That's quite the compliment. I mean it, she insisted. You've handled everything. Life has thrown at you this year with incredible grace. First Deborah's sabotage, now this unexpected delivery. You're basically a superhero. The mention of Deborah brought reality rushing back. In the intense focus on Emma's arrival, we'd temporarily set aside the complicated family dynamics awaiting us outside the hospital bubble. Has Nathan told her about the baby? Zoe asked, noticing my expression. Not yet, I admitted. We've been so focused on getting through the birth and recovery, but we'll need to decide soon. Nathan had stepped out to grab lunch from the hospital cafeteria, giving Zoe and me a moment of privacy. She handed Emma back to me, her expression turning serious. For what it's worth, I think Deborah genuinely regrets what she did, she said carefully. Linda says she's been doing intensive therapy, journaling, the whole self-improvement circuit. Not that it erases anything, but people can change, I finished. I know. We've been considering a mediated meeting after I recovered. From the birth. But that was before all these complications. Zoe nodded thoughtfully. Whatever you decide, just remember it's not all or nothing. There's a whole spectrum of possible relationships between best friends forever and never. Speak again. Her insight stayed with me after she left, through the final day of our hospital stay and into our first night home with Emma. Nathan had transformed our bedroom into a recovery sanctuary, with extra pillows supporting me in bed, a bassinet, positioned for easy access, and all essentials within reach to minimize my movement as the cesarean incision healed. Do you want to talk about my mom? He asked softly as we watched Emma sleep in her bassinet, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. About when and how to tell her. I considered the question, emotions still raw and close to the surface in these early postpartum days. I think we should tell her soon, I said finally. Not invite her over or anything. Just let her know Emma has arrived safely. Nathan nodded, relief evident in his posture. I've been thinking the same thing. After everything that happened, with your health at the end, it puts things in perspective. It does, I agreed. Life is fragile. Family is complicated but important. So I'll call her tomorrow? Just a brief update? He confirmed. Yes. And maybe we can revisit the idea of a mediated meeting with Dr. Winters in a few weeks, once we've settled into some kind of routine with Emma. The decision felt right. Cautious, but not closed off. Maintaining boundaries while acknowledging the potential for healing. The birth complications had indeed offered perspective. Some risks were worth taking if properly managed. Nathan made the call the next morning while I was nursing Emma in the nursery. I couldn't hear his exact words, but his tone was measured, neither overly warm nor coldly formal. When he rejoined us, his expression was thoughtful. How did she take it? I asked. She cried, he said simply. Said she's been praying for us daily since she left. She asked about your health and Emma's, but didn't push for details or visits. Just said she was grateful to know her granddaughter had arrived safely. I nodded, adjusting Emma as she continued nursing. That sounds appropriate. I told her we'd be in touch about potential visits once you've recovered more fully, he added. No promises, no timeline. She said she understands and will wait to hear from us. The conversation had gone as well as possible, perhaps indicating that Deborah's therapy was indeed making a difference. The old Deborah would have pushed for immediate access, would have inserted herself into our crisis, would have used my medical complications as leverage to reestablish her position of influence. The next 2 weeks passed in the blur familiar. To all new parents, sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, the constant cycle of feeding and burping and soothing. My physical recovery progressed well, the incision healing cleanly, and my blood pressure finally returning to normal ranges. Emma gained weight steadily, her newborn clothes already starting to seem snug. At 3 weeks postpartum, we had our first joint session with Dr. Winters since Emma's birth. The therapist cooed appropriately over pictures of the baby before addressing the question of Deborah. "How are you both feeling about potential contact now that Emma has arrived?" she asked. Nathan and I exchanged glances, having discussed this extensively the night before. "We're cautiously open to it," I answered, "but with very clear parameters." Dr. Winters nodded encouragingly. "What kind of parameters are you considering?" "Short, supervised visits initially," Nathan said. "In a neutral location, not our home. No food preparation or unmonitored time with Emma. And definite red lines," I added. "If she dismisses medical advice, tries to undermine our parenting decisions, or reverts to manipulative behavior, the contact ends immediately." "Those sound like very reasonable boundaries," Dr. Winters agreed. "Would you like me to facilitate the first meeting? Many families find that helpful when re-establishing contact after a significant breach of trust." We both nodded, relief evident in Nathan's posture. Having a professional present would provide a buffer and ensure the focus remained on healthy interaction rather than rehashing past hurts. "I'll reach out to her therapist to coordinate," Dr. Winters offered. "We can plan something for next week if you're feeling up to it, Olivia." The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Dr. Winters' office, neutral territory with professional support readily available. I spent the days leading up to it cycling through emotions, anxiety about potential conflict, hope for genuine reconciliation, fierce protectiveness of Emma, and lingering anger over what Deborah had done. "We can cancel if you're not ready," Nathan assured me that morning as we dressed Emma in a simple but adorable outfit for her first meeting with her grandmother. "There's no timeline we have to follow here." "I'm ready," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Not for immediate full forgiveness, but for a beginning. For Emma's sake, and for yours. The drive to Dr. Winters' office felt longer than usual, Emma sleeping peacefully in her car seat, oblivious to the emotional weight of the journey. When we arrived, Dr. Winters greeted us warmly, showing us to a comfortable sitting area rather than her usual therapy room. "Deborah is already here," she informed us. "I've reviewed the parameters with her, and she understands this is a preliminary meeting with no guarantees about future contact." Nathan squeezed my hand as Dr. Winters went to bring Deborah in. A moment later, the door opened, and there she stood, looking both familiar and somehow different. She'd lost weight, her clothes simpler than the stylish outfits she'd favored before. But the most striking change was in her expression, the imperious confidence replaced by genuine uncertainty. "Nathan," she breathed, eyes filling with tears. "Olivia, thank you for agreeing to this." Dr. Winters guided her to a seat across from us, subtly positioning herself between us as a buffer. For a moment, no one spoke, the weight of past conflicts and present possibilities filling the space between us. Deborah broke the silence, her voice steady despite her evident emotion. "Before anything else, I want to say again how deeply sorry I am for what I did. I've spent months working to understand why I acted as I did, the patterns I was repeating from my own upbringing, the fear of irrelevance that drove me. None of that excuses my behavior. But I want you to know I'm committed to changing. Nathan nodded, his expression guarded but not cold. We appreciate that, Mom. It's why we're here today. Deborah's gaze shifted to the car seat between us, where Emma slept peacefully. This is Emma, I said, carefully lifting her from the car seat. Emma Grace Chen, 3 weeks old yesterday. She's beautiful, Deborah whispered, tears spilling freely now. Absolutely perfect. Would you like to hold her? I asked, the offer surprising even me. Deborah looked up, shock evident in her expression. You would trust me to hold her? After everything? This is a supervised visit in a therapist's office, I clarified gently. We're taking small steps here, but yes, you can hold your granddaughter. As I placed Emma in Deborah's arms, watching her cradle the baby with practiced care, something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but possibility. The potential for a new relationship, built on clearer understanding and firmer boundaries than what had come before. Hello, Emma, Deborah murmured, studying her granddaughter's face with undisguised wonder. I'm your grandmother. I've made some big mistakes, but I'm going to do better. For you and for your mom and dad. Dr. Winters caught my eye across the room, offering a small nod of approval at how the interaction was unfolding. This was just the beginning. One brief, supervised visit that would need to be followed by many more careful steps before true trust could be established. Deborah would need to consistently demonstrate her commitment to change, to respecting our boundaries, to putting Emma's well-being above her own desires. But as I watched her with my daughter, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps the family we were building could eventually include her, not as the controlling presence she'd once been, but as the supportive grandmother Emma deserved. The visit lasted 30 minutes, Dr. Winters gently guiding the conversation away from sensitive topics when needed. Deborah returned Emma to Nathan when asked, accepted our limitations on future visits without protest, and expressed genuine interest in my recovery without minimizing the seriousness of the preeclampsia. As we prepared to leave, Deborah hesitated by the door. I have something for Emma, she said, reaching into her purse. It's nothing elaborate, just, if it's not appropriate, please say so. She withdrew a small velvet pouch and handed it to Nathan. Inside was a simple silver bracelet sized for a baby with a single charm, a tiny heart engraved with Emma's birth date. It's adjustable as she grows, Deborah explained nervously. And I checked with the jeweler that it's safe for babies, though obviously she wouldn't wear it unattended. The gift was thoughtful but understated, respectful of our parenting choices, while acknowledging her relationship to Emma. I exchanged a glance with Nathan, seeing my own assessment reflected in his eyes. Thank you, I said sincerely. We'll save it for special occasions when she's a bit older. Deborah nodded, clearly relieved by our acceptance. That sounds perfect. As we drove home after the meeting, Emma still sleeping soundly in her car seat, Nathan reached over to squeeze my hand. That went better than I expected. It did, I agreed. She seems genuinely different. One step at a time, he reminded me, echoing our mantra from the past months. One step at a time, I repeated, looking back at our daughter. For Emma's sake, it's worth trying. The following weeks brought a gradual establishment of new routines, both with Emma and with Deborah. Short, supervised visits became slightly longer ones. Dr. Winter's office gave way to meetings at neutral public locations like parks and cafes. Each interaction built upon the last, establishing a new framework for family relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation or obligation. Deborah continued her therapy, sometimes sharing insights from her sessions that helped us understand her past behavior. I've been working on recognizing when I'm trying to control situations out of fear, she explained during one visit. My therapist calls it anxious attachment, stemming from my own mother's inconsistent parenting. These glimpses into her internal work made it easier to separate the Deborah who had sabotaged my pregnancy from the woman sitting before us now, genuinely striving to become a healthier person and more supportive family member. By the time Emma was 3 months old, we had established a cautious but functional relationship. Deborah visited our home once a week for a few hours, always respectful of our parenting choices, always careful to check before offering suggestions. "I read an article about baby massage for colic," she mentioned one afternoon as Emma fussed through a particularly difficult day. "But I'm sure you've already researched options. You're both such attentive parents." The acknowledgement of our competence, so different from her previous dismissive attitude, spoke volumes about her progress. When I asked her to demonstrate the massage technique, the collaborative moment felt like a milestone. Deborah offering knowledge without demanding control, me accepting help without surrendering authority. As my maternity leave neared its end, we faced the childcare decisions that had once been such a point of contention. Kelly had approved my flexible return-to-work plan, allowing me to ease back into professional responsibilities gradually. But we still needed reliable care for Emma during my office hours. "We've toured 3 different childcare centers," I told Deborah during a Sunday afternoon visit. "The one connected to Nathan's company seems best, but there's a wait list." I watched her carefully, half expecting the old Deborah to re-emerge with arguments against institutional childcare. Instead, she nodded thoughtfully. "Have you considered a nanny share with another family? My friend Linda's daughter did that when she went back to work." The suggestion was offered without judgment, a practical option rather than a veiled criticism. Another small victory in our evolving relationship. "We've thought about it," Nathan confirmed. "There's a family 2 streets over with twins a few months older than Emma. Their mom works from home 3 days a week." "That sounds promising," Deborah replied, adjusting Emma's sock that had started to slip off. "I know you'll find the right solution. You always do such thorough research." The compliment, so casually delivered, caught me by surprise. How far we had come from the woman who had once tried to dictate every aspect of our lives, who had actively sabotaged my health to force her preferred outcome. Later that evening, after Deborah had gone and Emma was asleep in her crib, Nathan and I sat on the back porch swing, enjoying the mild September evening. My return to work was just a week away, a transition I approached with mixed emotions despite my confidence in our childcare plans. "I've been thinking," Nathan said, his arm around my shoulders, "about everything we've been through this past year." "It's been quite a journey," I agreed, watching the Japanese maple's leaves flutter in the gentle breeze. "When Mom first moved, and I never imagined we'd end up here. You recovering from an emergency C-section, me taking extended paternity leave, my mother in intensive therapy." I laughed softly. "Don't forget the hidden cameras in the kitchen and the medical documentation of food tampering. Not exactly the pregnancy experience I had envisioned." He pulled me closer. "I'm so sorry you had to go through all that." "I'm not," I said, surprising myself with the realization. "Not entirely, anyway. Obviously, I wish your mother hadn't endangered my health or tried to undermine our relationship, but the crisis forced us to confront patterns that might have continued, indefinitely otherwise." Nathan considered this. "You mean my inability to set boundaries with her?" "That and my own tendency to avoid conflict by accommodating unreasonable behavior," I admitted. "We both needed to grow, and sometimes growth requires pressure." "Like a diamond," he mused. "Exactly. The pressure was extreme, but what emerged is stronger, clearer." I gestured toward the nursery window, where a soft nightlight cast a gentle glow. "And now we have Emma. And a healthier relationship with my mother than I've had in decades," Nathan added. "Not perfect, not completely healed, but honest in a way it never was before." The baby monitor on the porch railing lit up with Emma's first stirrings. Soon, She'd fully wake for her evening feeding, the familiar rhythm that structured our days and nights now. "I'll get her," Nathan offered, standing from the swing. I caught his hand, pulling him back for a kiss. "Thank you for believing me when I said something was wrong, for standing with me when it would have been easier not to." "Always," he promised. "It's what family does, what real family does. Stand together, face the truth, grow through challenges." As he went inside to retrieve our daughter, I remained on the porch, reflecting on the unexpected journey that had brought us here. The mother-in-law who had tried to sabotage my pregnancy had inadvertently strengthened our marriage, forced crucial growth, and ultimately transformed herself through the painful consequences of her actions. The doctor's report that confirmed my suspicions had changed everything, not just by validating my experience, but by initiating a cascade of difficult truths and necessary confrontations that had reshaped our family from the foundation up. When Nathan returned with Emma, her tiny face alert in the evening light, I took her in my arms with a sense of profound gratitude for her health, for our resilience, and for the hard-won wisdom that would guide us as we raised her to recognize both healthy love and dangerous control. She would grow up knowing her worth, understanding boundaries, and valuing authenticity over appearance. Lessons paid for dearly, but worth every painful moment of their acquisition. "Welcome to our family, Emma," I whispered as she nestled against me. "It's not perfect, but it's real, and that's so much better." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.